book selling is the art of recommendation. It's talking to people about what they've read previously or the person for whom they're buying a gift and trying to find the right thing and drawing on your store of knowledge and your colleague's store of knowledge in order to fulfill that. And the amount of satisfaction that you can get selling a $7.99 paperback when it's absolutely the perfect thing for that person was just utterly, utterly extraordinary.
On today's episode of Careers Unwrapped, we're excited to have with us Tom Ayling, who's a distinguished bookseller and an expert in rare books and manuscripts. Now, Tom has, as I'm finding out, a deep expertise in curating exceptional collections for both private individuals and institutions. He's got a deep passion for literature, historical works, and that's also led him to establish Tom W. Ayling Rare Books and Manuscripts, a company preserving and disseminating rare literary treasures. He's also made a significant impact on social media, where his videos that really demystify perhaps the often arcane world of rare books have now captured the attention of, I think, over 500,000 followers. So join us as we delve into hopefully the fascinating world of a career in rare books with Tom, exploring his journey and also the evolving landscape of literary preservation. So, Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark. It's great to talk with you.
I think one thing I'm just really interested to know, and this is often a bit of a tangent straight away, the book that you've never seen in person, that you've never had your hands on, that you really want to, what would that book be?
Mark, there's too many to list. I, like a lot of people in my trade, do keep our sort of secret black book of wants, books that we dream of finding. And it's not often in this trade a book that we necessarily know exists. It's not just as simple as saying, oh, it'd be lovely to have a Gutenberg Bible or a Shakespeare First Folio. It's often a book that you think might exist, but perhaps it doesn't. One of my favorite stories of sort of 20th century intellectual history is about Isaiah Berlin going to visit the Russian poet Anna Akhmatova. Obviously in communist Russia, the arts were very much under fire under the regime. And it's reported through these secondary sources that they had a whole evening staying up through the night talking about art and literature and philosophy, and that this conversation was sort of the very essence of what it meant to have a platonic relationship with someone, an intellectual relationship with someone. And my bet is that a book must have changed hands during that conversation. She must have pulled something down from the shelf and given it to Isaiah Berlin, or perhaps he brought a book along and inscribed it for her. And the thought of books like that existing out there, it wouldn't be necessarily a rare book. It might just be a paperback copy of something that they'd recently read and enjoyed. But that's what keeps you going out and hunting for things, the prospect of finding those objects that can, that mean something to those stories, that make stories like that seem more real.
And I think that's one thing that I presume many of us find so interesting about the area you're in and books in general, is that of course you can have the very, very rare, very costly items, historical value, but you've also got the things that aren't that rare, but because of who they've passed between, they mean so much to those people. And I was given a box of books not too long ago by my parents, which had come from their parents. And I just remember this very old, withered copy of a Winnie the Pooh that I just remembered actually having that read to me when I was a child. So there's no value in it at all, except to me. And I think that's what books can do to a lot of people. Now, many children start out as readers and then they fade away. It's a known problem, just switching off, especially today with social media being so attractive. But what fired up your passions when you were younger? What do you think turned you from somebody who like many others read into somebody who actually thought, though, I'm going to do more with this?
Well, I'm very lucky in that my parents encouraged reading a great deal. We went to the library every week to get a new book out, and I was fortunate in that I developed the habit of reading for pleasure at quite a young age. But that's very different to what I do now, and And that's, reading is, a wonderful thing that we all do and love and enjoy. And that is a process of seeing a book as a text. And so you might have 2 copies of Pride and Prejudice, and they contain the same words in the same order, and therefore to the vast majority of people seem the same. But when you go into the world of book history and antiquarian books and the trade in it, it's all about the differences between 2 copies of the same text that become interesting. So I was very fortunate in that when I was 10 years old, one of my favorite authors came to visit my school. Her name was Caroline Lawrence, and she wrote a brilliant series of books called The Roman Mysteries, which was almost like the sort of famous 5 or Secret 7 being set in ancient Rome or something. And I brought in very excitedly as an eager 10-year-old, a big pile of books for her to sign. And I don't know why this was, but 6 of them were paperbacks and one of them was a hardback. And so she went away merrily signing my large pile of books while my classmates stood in line behind me. And she got to the last one, this orange hardback book. And she said, "Hey, this is a first edition." And I thought, that's not a word I'd heard before, but I have to say that those 2 words next to each other did sound quite special to me. And then she said, because it's first edition, there's a mistake in it. And I'll correct it for you. So she inscribed it on the title page for me. And then she turned towards the back of the book to where there was this typo. And she got out her marker pen and she corrected it by hand. And then she put a big exclamation mark in the margin to apologize for the error. And suddenly I had an object that felt so different to what I walked in with earlier that morning. Not just that it had been signed for me, but that it was, fundamentally, textually different to, the paperback copy that all my classmates were having had signed. And so you get that. I got this feeling, and it wasn't a sophisticated feeling, and it wasn't as sophisticated as the way I'm expressing it to you now. But you got this feeling that some books are more special than others, even when they're, copies of the same book. And that's really at the heart of what we do in the trade in rare books and manuscripts.
And so when you started working, you were a bookseller for a company, topping company, Booksellers. And then you moved from there, I believe, into being an antiquarian bookseller. How did that career path start? And actually for a lot of people listening to this, how did you get to realize that this could be a career?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that, and I think it's true for a lot of people who are, passionate about the arts and want a career in the arts or a career in literature. And that's often you can't see the path going forward, but it's quite easy to join up going backwards. If you read my CV, I mean, it's sort of bookseller, but, and that might all make sense going forwards. But I started working at a wonderful independent bookshop called Topping Company while I was at university. I badgered them for a job. And then eventually, after sort of 6 months of begging, I bumped into the owner at the British Museum at an exhibition of Greek marbles. And he thought, oh, yeah, this might be the sort of chap we need. So utter, well, I mean, part persistence, but then utter chance that the job came about. But I worked there for my sort of last year and a half at university and absolutely fell in love with working in a bookshop with bookselling. And specifically bookselling. When I got that job, I thought I'd love to work in a bookshop. What a lovely environment to work in. And when you're a student, it's probably better than, serving drinks at a bar or waiting tables, which is what I'd done previously. But I discovered the more I did it that I really liked selling books. Because it wasn't selling in the way that, you might think of a salesperson with, sales targets and deadlines, cold calling people all day. Book selling is the art of recommendation. It's talking to people about what they've read previously or the person for whom they're buying a gift and trying to find the right thing and drawing on your store of knowledge and your colleague's store of knowledge in order to fulfill that. And the amount of satisfaction that you can get selling a $7.99 paperback when it's absolutely the perfect thing for that person was just utterly extraordinary. I just absolutely loved it. But sort of career prospects wise at that stage, I was just finishing my final year at university. And what I thought I wanted to do was go off and be an academic. So I'd actually, after my undergraduate degree, I started postgraduate study at the School of Oriental Studies in London. And about 2 months into it, I just missed bookselling too much. And so that's when I applied for the job at Yonkers Rare Books, having decided that pivoting into the antiquarian book trade, one, might be more interesting, but two, might have, sort of, I guess, greater career progression within it than working with new books. And, got the job, and I've been selling books ever since.
And some people might think, okay, well, what do you therefore do in terms of a week at work? With some jobs or some careers, you can sort of imagine it, even if you're not part of it. And we're recording this early on a Monday morning. So what's in your intro, your to-do list for the week ahead?
Well, the wonderful thing about it is that it's different every week, and no 2 days are the same. And one thing that's different about my job now to what it was when I started in the book trade, which was working, as you say, for Yonkers Rare Book, which is a brilliant firm specializing mainly in English literature in Henley-on-Thames, is that now I run my own business. So I'm doing all the book selling and all the everything else as well, which, one's still adapting to, but I've got this call with you this morning. After that, I'm about to hire my first member of staff for the business. I've then got a call with a HR consultant after this. I had about 12 or 13 orders come in over the weekend. So I've then got to pack all of those up and send all of those out. And then, as always, there's an email inbox filled with inquiries and a shelf of books that I need to catalog, which is our formal way of describing books and presenting them to customers. Well, that's probably enough to keep me going for the next couple of days, really.
And how are you finding the business side of things? Because as you've already clearly said, the passion that you've built up over time for your line of work is very clear. But you've decided not to work for other people, but to work for yourself. So what challenges and what opportunities has going into business thrown up for you?
Well, a lot of challenges, and it's immensely different to just doing what you might consider the sort of pure pay element of book selling, which is buying and selling books, because you have all these other things thrown in. And the truth of it is that what I've discovered in the first 6 months of doing this is that all those other things I'm not actually very good at. So for me, it's all been about finding amazing, helpful, talented people who can provide support. So I've got fantastic accountants who help with the financial side, and I can talk through all the financial side of the business with. I'm very lucky in that I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so almost everyone on both sides of my family have started and ran their own businesses. So they've been a great pool of insight. And one of the most gratifying things about it actually is that I post everything I do on social media. What I get up to in a week, all the difficulties, the successes, the late nights, and so on. And what's actually surprised me is the amount of people who've got in touch, who are book collectors or maybe, watched the content and thought about book collecting. He said, yeah, that reminds me of when I was in my 20s and setting up my business. And they've been an amazing resource as well. So it's just been a case of, talking to as many people as possible, trying to get as much help and insight from them as possible to help me with the things that I'm not good at. I'm pretty good at the book side of the business. And the rest of it is a very steep learning curve.
The social media piece is fascinating. Obviously, it can be a critical business tool, but you have to be good at it because there's a lot of rubbish out there. And I was looking through a number of your videos before we spoke and just found fascinating stories embedded in so many of them. And one in particular stood out. You talking about the translation of Volsunga Saga and how that inspired parts of Tolkien's Middle East. And then you just think of the connections, because obviously writers are readers too, and are inspired by what they read, and how that creates the stories that then go down into the books and manuscripts that you deal with. So how did you get started on the social media side? What either tricks or tools or confidence helped you take those first steps?
I think the key with social media is just to post. I think lucky in that I was the generation who got to live most of their childhood without social media. And then it came in at an age where developmentally it didn't do us a great deal of harm, which I think is, a hugely privileged position to be in. But I was sort of, on Instagram from about the age of 16, on Facebook probably from the age of 13. And so putting content on social media is just sort of what we do as a generation. So, I get interested in books and I start posting about books on social media. And I mean, really what you see now is me having posted thousands of videos online. And what you don't see now is me having never posted content online, which is very, very different in terms of quality and perception and well, everything, to be honest with you. So if you're thinking about doing it, you just have to start. You just have to post, press publish and learn as you go, because it's a volume game. You have to do lots of it to get good at it. And I wasn't particularly confident in front of camera. I'm not an excellent writer or storyteller in my personal life, or dare I say it on podcasts. But just by doing it literally thousands of times, you can develop a way to, tell an engaging story in a short segment like, 60, 90 seconds that you have on platforms like, TikTok and Instagram.
It's interesting you say about your family's influence when it comes to starting your own business, and whether that's a direct influence or just a sense of comfort around your confidence. And I run my own business, and so do both of my brothers. And I don't think it's any coincidence that our mother was somebody who set up and ran her own business. So we sort of, it became part of family life and conversation, and removes only a little bit of the scariness of starting out. But from when you did start out, what are the lessons you think you've learned? If you could go back to your younger self and say, look, don't do this and do that, what might you say?
Well, it's still early on. I mean, I set up independently in the early spring of this year, so we're months in. But as you might expect, that still left lots of time to make lots of mistakes. I mean, ultimately, what would be great to go back and tell myself in hindsight is, it will be okay. Those first couple of months were very, very thin. It was really hard to get the business going. And, there were anxious moments where you get to the end of the month and you haven't made enough money to pay your bills. And, that's a problem when you've got a wife who's on maternity leave and a 6-month-old daughter at home. So, I mean, I don't know what the lesson is there, because, one doesn't want to say, oh, it'll be fine, because, sometimes it just isn't. But I had very little confidence in my own ability to make a living for myself independently, to go bowling with the sidewalls down, as it were. And just the fact that it actually is possible and is actually ultimately been easier and less scary than I thought it would be. Looking back, I suppose I probably wish I'd started sooner. But yeah. And I guess it's one of those things. It's like the career thing I was saying about earlier. You can't necessarily see it all coming together with the road out in front of you. But looking back, it's quite easy to see how it all pieces together quite nicely.
I think you often are putting in place the foundations of your career at the very beginning without even noticing you're putting those foundations in place. And so when I started my business, which now is 20 years ago, and obviously during that time have seen recessions, have seen COVID, and now I'm reasonably unfazed by what might be thrown at me. But when I started, my wife was on maternity leave. We had 2 young children. Our third was, just after she rang me at my newly IKEA outfitted office, say, oh, pregnant again, third child's on the way. And so it can really, really phase you, but it's part of that just steady progress, one foot in front of the other, having the confidence in your own skills and ability, however anxiety inducing it might be at the time. It's an emotional phase in a business life, definitely. And one area I'm very interested in is the private collector side of what you do. And sometimes you will go and hunt out for particular requests. Now, who are you dealing with, without name their names, but what sort of people are the private collectors who are saying, I'm missing this, or this is what I want? Who are they, and what do you then do for them?
I mean, it's not a demographic. You can't easily quantify it in, age group or interest or gender or, background in any way. And that's the joy of it. I get to deal with a hugely diverse range of people from all over the world, all ages. I have, very, very young collectors and, collectors who have been collecting now for half a century that I get to work with. But, at the heart of what I do, and in a sort of business point of view, I want to, acquire books that I know I can sell. And the best way of doing that is to acquire a book that someone's told you they want. So you work with people, and sometimes it's as simple as fulfilling a request. So, someone says, "Oh, I have a first edition of The Hobbit. Can you get me a first edition of Lord of the Rings?" That's quite simple. But like you said, the Volsunga Saga that I had, which is the first translation into English, produced by William Morris, or by William Morris in conjunction with somebody else, that Tolkien read in his youth, actually bought a copy of it when he was given a prize at university. That sold to a Tolkien collector, not to someone who had said, I'm interested in Norse mythology. Can you get me a copy of this translation of this book? But someone who was interested in the deep background of Tolkien's work, and actually had a daughter who was interested in Norse mythology and was looking for a 16th birthday present for her. So it was this wonderful sort of twinning of their interests. One, you've got the Tolkien element that suited the mother, and one, you've got the sort of Norse element that the daughter was really interested in. So it's about looking for those connections, and sometimes they're very obvious, and sometimes they only sort of present themselves after a lot of research and a lot of digging.
Now, sometimes, of course, if you've got a collector request, or you're personally looking for a book, your own network of dealers, of shops, of other organizations, and your knowledge of where those books are likely to be would give you a head start. But what about occasions where you've just uncovered new finds, new books? What about unexpected sources of where manuscripts or books have come to your attention?
Yes, well, there's a wonderful saying by a very well-established American collector called Mark Samuel Lasner, who says anything could be anywhere. And that's absolutely true. Some things you will find perfectly presented to you on a shop floor as a first edition of X, and it's just a case of, I have someone who wants it, so we'll do it. But I had a wonderful thing earlier this year that I was, this was in the very early days of setting up my business. I had almost no money to spend on books, which is an issue. And I just happened to be scrolling through some auction listings, and something caught my eye. It was these two books in boxes. And in the first image, you couldn't actually see what books were inside the boxes, just that there were these two custom-made boxes with books in it. And that got me very excited, because if a book has had a box made for it, 100 years ago or so, that's a sort of signal that there might be something special inside. So I made a mark of it and said, "Hey, Tom, you have to come back to that," and totally forgot about it for a week or so. The auction went by, and it happened to be sort of still in my tab. So I opened it up and I saw it had gone unsold at this auction. Nobody else had bought it. It slipped everybody by. And I thought, well, I'll get in touch. I got in touch with the auction house and said, "Hey, look, I meant to buy this, but didn't. Would the owner still be interested in selling it to me?" And they would. So I bought it and I got it back here and opened up the boxes. And there were the two most beautiful and pristine book bindings in there. One was on a copy of Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, illustrated by Arthur Rackham, quite a valuable book in its own right. And one was on a biography of Florence Nightingale. And what was interesting about them is that they both had inscriptions in them. So in the Peter Pan, it said, "To Nell from Arthur, 1913. And in the Florence Nightingale book, it was actually inscribed in gold letters in the binding itself. So the inscription wasn't handwritten, it was tooled into the binding. And it said, Nellie Fyson, ex Dono, which is Latin for, a gift from, AJG, which was this man's initials. And so it turned out, after quite a lot of digging, The AJG was a chap called Arthur John Gray, who was a young bookbinder at his family firm of bookbinders, and the Nell or Nellie that he'd not just inscribed these books for, but made them for, was his fiancée. So we have the most touching gifts given to her in 1912 and 1913, the Peter Pan in 1913. The Florence Nightingale was given to her in 1912 because I discovered that Nellie was training to be a nurse. And there is unfortunately a tragic end to this story because in 1914, obviously, Arthur, the young bookbinder, he was, I think, 21 and newly engaged, was, joined the army for the First World War. And on the first day of fighting at the Battle of Passchendaele, he died. And I was sat there at my desk, I mean, literally, with tears in my eyes, over these books that both I and everybody else in the world had totally passed on. And yet, just by opening them up and looking inside and doing a little bit of digging, you get this, beautiful and tragic story about craft and love and loss and war and all these, these great themes of literature, quite frankly, just sat there in two unadorned cloth boxes. So, that was a pretty special, not discovery, but I guess chance, bit of research. There were the private character. So I made a video sharing their story, and I think to date I've received maybe 25 or 30 orders for the book. That's one of the tragedies of the trade that I'm in. You can only sell a book once to one person. These things aren't. You can't mint more of them. They're not NFTs or anything. So yeah. But they're in a wonderful private collection of fine book bindings somewhere where they're in a really terrific context of other great book bindings of the same period, where the owner, absolutely fully appreciates and understands that story. And who knows? Those books may come back to me one day. Books do have a way of coming back to you in this trade.
And with your substantial social media presence, do you therefore quite a high public profile for the trade, for the sector, the profession that you're in? Do you also find quite a lot of people coming to you and saying, I've got these books, I've inherited this box of books from my grandparents, I found this in the attic, they must be worth thousands? Do you get quite a lot of people coming to you saying, I've got brilliant books for you to buy from me? And how much of that works out?
Yes, well, very, very little is the short answer. It's actually one of the things about social media is that it's what is great in terms of discovery. That's the essence of these platforms is what they do is discovery, and they will find the users of the platform, the viewers when it comes to videos, content that they're interested in, and because it works that way around. The chief benefit from business sense is that it finds people who are likely to be interested in book collecting and therefore are likely to buy books from you. You get a certain amount of related inquiries where people do want to sell things. But I could probably count on one hand. My videos get seen between 10 and 20 million times a month across all platforms. And I can count literally on one hand the amount of books that I've bought, out of my DMs, as it were. And that's in part because, rare books, we call them rare for a reason. Most people don't have them. There's a wonderful bookseller called Ken Sanders. He's based in Utah. And whenever someone asks him what a rare book is, he says it's a book that I have and you don't. But most people don't have rare books lying around in the attic. They might have, general second-hand books or books that are, wonderful to read, but not particularly collectible. And one does get offered quite a lot of that. But I'm very, very picky about the books that I buy. And that's in part because, well, to a certain degree, my customers are very picky. And to a certain degree, I'm very picky on their behalf. I only want to present them with really, really high quality material.
Now, we've spoken a lot about rare books, but you also deal in manuscripts, and I perhaps might help just give us a quick, what's the difference between a rare book and a manuscript? Maybe a couple of examples of manuscripts that have passed through your hands in the last year or so.
If we're talking about rare books in sort of contradistinction to manuscripts, then we're talking about essentially printed books. and manuscripts. So a printed book is printed on a printing press, and they're usually they're at least created in multiple copies, even if now they don't survive in multiple copies. Whereas manuscripts are handwritten, and therefore they are in a certain sense unique. I mean, I actually have on my desk here, for those watching on YouTube, I'll describe it for podcast listeners. This is a Bible leaf from the book of Ecclesiasticus. This is entirely written by hand in the 13th century. So this piece of, not paper, but vellum, this is animal skin, is 800 years old. And the fact that it's written by hand means that it's completely unique. We're looking at the work of a scribe who sat down and probably over the course of 6 months to a year written out a copy of the Bible in the Latin Vulgate. You have wonderful things like this decoration in addition to the lettering. So that's going back quite a long way. The other wonderful thing about manuscripts is that it's where, in historical terms, all books begin. Authors would write their books by hand in a manuscript before they're printed. Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, all these great authors handwrote all their novels. Obviously, later you get typewriters, and today you get Microsoft Word. But in those kind of manuscripts, you get to the very, very point of creation. In some cases, the origin of the genius of a work, of a novel, of a scientific discovery. You can actually see the ink forming at that point in time in that person's hand. And that's the most privileged you can be in this trade, to feel like you're stood over the shoulders of a great artist, watching them work. And that's exactly what it feels like to, turn the pages of a great manuscript.
And in that context, what tools do you have available to you to ensure the authenticity of any book or manuscript that's coming to you or coming through your hands?
Yeah. I mean, forgeries of entire objects are rare but not unheard of. And the tool that you have is your own experience and your own know-how and your knowledge and what you can see with your own eyes. There are some cases where using actual, tools, enhanced lighting, magnification and things can be very, very useful. For example, if you look at a signature that you think is wrong, so let's say you've got one of Winston Churchill's books and it's signed by him, that could make a book that's worth a few £100s, worth a few thousand. So in other words, it would be worth a forger's time to give it a go. And you can actually, when you magnify one of those signatures, you can look at how the ink gathers in the signature and use those patterns to determine whether it's a natural flow of the hand or whether it's someone very slowly and deliberately copying. Because, when I sign something, it takes 2 seconds, and I'm sure it's the same when you're signing your signature too, and it's the same for authors signing a book. So you can tell forgeries. There have been 1 or 2 examples of someone essentially forging an entire printed book, but that's an extremely involved process because you have to literally duplicate the printing plates for every single page of a book that might be 500-600 pages long. This is years of work and a very low success rate because you still can't, what you can't do is you can't really replicate, 1, the age of the paper, 2, the impression of the metal type. If you're sort of 3D printing it in, silicon or whatever, it's not going to leave the same impression on the page as metal type. So sure, people try it. And one encounters, the thing one encounters most is forged signatures. Entire forged books are less common.
No, that makes sense. And from your business perspective then, and sort of ending in this area, as you said, you started up on your own a matter of months ago. How do you grow the business to the level of success you want in an area where you said there's a limited set of products here? They're rare because there aren't many of them. What do you need in place to really grow your business to the level you want it to be?
Well, I think it's a few different things. I mean, you can sell more books, or you can sell, more books to more people, or you can sell more expensive books. And the way that I've been growing it in truth is by selling, more books to more people. I want to get as many people as possible interested in book collecting and really, open up this world to, I don't like saying a new generation, book collectors, because I know that my social media following are all ages. And, that's maybe one thing people don't realize about social media, is that actually the amount of people who sort of aren't in their 20s that become book collectors as a result probably surprises people. But yeah, I mean, sort of just spreading the word, keep buying great books and finding those stories and telling as many people as possible about them. And yeah, to be honest, it's just from my perspective, it's just a case of, keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, Tom, thank you so much. I mean, personally, this is a conversation I would love to carry on in much more detail in so many areas, and also to touch the books that you have and just to feel them, because so much of that is, for me personally, the difference between a book in your hand as opposed to the words on a screen. And if the book in your hand has a weight and a history and a quality to it, then that's just a wonderful experience. But I think for anyone and everyone listening to this, from a career perspective, pieces I've been taking out of this are the importance of persistence, of the ways in which you can turn a passion into a career. From a social media perspective, for those who see the value of that to their business, just start, just get going, because you will get better and better as you go along from there. The importance also, obviously, of plugging into people and the need within your line of work to not only just on the customer side, but on the sourcing side, to have those networks, those relationships established in place, and also being a bit of a detective in there as well. And I think there are many other people whose passions may lie in completely different areas and who are going through the challenges of turning that into a business that can support them and their family. And it probably will be okay, as you said at the beginning, not for everyone and not every time, but take those steps, move forward, build on the skills and knowledge you've got, and you've got a really good shot at it. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining us on Careers Unwrapped. It's been wonderful to talk to you and great to hear about how your career is developing. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mark, very much for having me. It's been wonderful to talk to you, and thank you for putting everything I said far more cogently than I was able to at the end there.
This podcast is sponsored by We Are Futures. To find out more about We Are Futures and how we can introduce your brand, business or organisation to the mass markets of tomorrow, visit www.wearefutures.com. Make sure to search for Careers Unwrapped in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Remember to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at We Are Futures, thanks for listening.